Have you ever wondered how certain ancient writings, often shrouded in mystery and debated for centuries, can still capture our imaginations and challenge us to reflect on our spiritual beliefs in the modern day? The Book of Enoch is one of those texts that, despite not appearing in most versions of the Bible, continues to intrigue scholars, believers, and curious minds alike. It stands as a fascinating testament to the human desire for divine insight, the search for hidden truths, and the hope of redemption that transcends time. Though its contents may be cloaked in supernatural visions, spectacular prophecies, and sometimes cryptic imagery, it has managed to leave an indelible imprint on Christian and Jewish traditions, inspiring theologians and laypeople to revisit its pages in hopes of finding illuminating glimpses into cosmic order, angelic realms, and God's ultimate plan for humanity. In exploring this text, we are also diving into ancient thoughts on the nature of prophecies, on how we interpret them, and on what it means for them to come from a divine source intended to guide humanity toward righteousness. These prophecies, as presented in the Book of Enoch, intersect with some of the most prominent ideas found in the Bible, namely judgment, redemption, moral accountability, and the promise of a restored world under divine rule. By immersing ourselves in these stories and visions, we discover a historical tapestry that weaves together apocalyptic imagery, moral lessons, cosmic battles, and the constant interplay between human free will and divine providence. Many readers of the Book of Enoch are initially struck by the radical notion that an entire collection of visionary material attributed to the biblical patriarch Enoch, who was said to walk with God and never taste death, was left outside the canonical Bible for most Jewish and Christian communities. When it comes to biblical canonicity, decisions were influenced by centuries of theological disputes, varying traditions, and the need to solidify certain doctrines in the early church era. One of the more remarkable facts is that Enoch, identified in Genesis as the great-grandfather of Noah, is not described in the Standard Bible in nearly as much detail as he is in the text that bears his name. The biblical text only briefly mentions Enoch's exceptional righteousness and how, because of his closeness to God, he was taken to heaven without facing a mortal end. Yet, the Book of Enoch expands on that idea comprehensively, portraying his cosmic travels, his encounters with angelic beings and fallen angels, and a series of revelations about world events spanning from the earliest epochs of human history up until a future final judgment. Many early Christian and Jewish writers found these narratives and prophecies challenging to reconcile with mainstream doctrines, which contributed to its exclusion from the canon in most traditions. However, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church and the Eritrean Orthodox Tewahedo Church did include it within their scriptural canon, indicating its enduring importance and highlighting the cultural and doctrinal diversity that has existed within the broader Christian world. Regardless of how one perceives its canonical status, the Book of Enoch has garnered a reputation for containing knowledge and stories that parallel and sometimes supplement widely known biblical episodes. The text narrates the origin of spiritual corruption, describing the Watchers, angels tasked with overseeing humanity, who fell from grace after indulging in forbidden relations with human women. These unions led to the birth of the Nephilim, often understood to be giant offspring or powerful hybrid beings, whose corruption pushed humanity deeper into sin. In this narrative, Enoch is not a mere bystander. He is portrayed as a righteous figure granted visions of divine secrets and prophecies about imminent events, including the Great Flood that would reset the world from its moral decay. The floods, the subsequent judgments, and the promise of future redemption form an integral part of the storyline, reinforcing the idea that God's justice is always at work, punishing the wicked, preserving the righteous, and eventually restoring a purified creation in alignment with divine values. These ideas can resonate powerfully with believers who see in Enoch's tales a reflection of God's consistent dealings with humanity, the cycle of sin, judgment, mercy, and renewal. In exploring the prophecies that the Book of Enoch lays out, we find that some appear to have already come to pass, while others remain as yet unfulfilled, fueling ongoing theological speculation. For instance, in the text, Enoch sees and announces a vision of an all-encompassing flood that would wipe out evil and begin the world anew. This flood prophecy in Enoch parallels the canonical account of Noah's Ark found in the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament, so believers draw a straight line from Enoch's words to the reality of the deluge that took place. Through that lens, Enoch's flood prophecy appears to have reached its fulfillment in biblical tradition. Another striking prophecy pertains to the cyclical nature of rise and fall among the world's most powerful kingdoms, and whether one reads ancient history through a purely secular lens or a spiritual one, history does indeed present us with a succession of empires: Egyptian, Assyrian, Babylonian, Persian, Greek, Roman, and beyond, each ascending to power, achieving a golden era, then crumbling under various pressures. Enoch's purported visions about empires eventually decaying also resonate with the many times the biblical texts admonish us that no earthly power endures forever. So as people revisit these ancient words, they might be struck by how relevant such a prophecy remains, even as modern superpowers come and go, shaped by political, cultural, and moral forces that determine their longevity. A particularly important prophecy in the Book of Enoch is the coming of a messianic figure who would ultimately guide and redeem humanity. In Christian theology, many interpret this as a foreshadowing of Jesus Christ, the Messiah, who arrives to offer salvation and establish a path of redemption for anyone who believes. This resonates strongly with the typical Christian reading of prophecy in other Old Testament texts. Believers see Enoch's vision of a Redeemer figure as aligning perfectly with Jesus' mission of mercy, sacrifice, and spiritual renewal. Consequently, it bolsters a Christ-centered reading of ancient Jewish traditions, painting a unifying picture of God's plan across ages. From the perspective of those who accept Jesus as the Messiah, Enoch's glimpse of a future righteous ruler who ushers in a kingdom of peace and justice has indeed come to fruition, at least in part, through the birth, ministry, death, and resurrection of Christ, even if the fullness of that kingdom is not yet entirely realized. Enoch's prophecy of a Messiah also hints at the cosmic dimension of this Savior's role, for Jesus' redemptive act is said to have cosmic consequences, affecting not just humankind, but also the spiritual realm of fallen angels and powers of darkness that foment corruption in the world. Still, other prophecies remain distinctly future-oriented, especially those concerning a final judgment, the purification of creation, the punishment of both fallen angels and unrepentant humans, and the reward of the righteous who place their faith in God. Many interpreters correlate these Enochic prophecies with the apocalyptic material found in the canonical books of Daniel and Revelation, which similarly describe a cosmic reckoning. Enoch's vision of a great tribunal, presided over by God and anointed agents such as the Son of Man or the Messiah, includes graphic images of punishment for those who have defied divine law and the exaltation of those who have walked uprightly before God. While it can be unnerving to read about a final judgment that evaluates and weighs every deed and thought, it also provides a source of consolation for believers. The idea that there will be ultimate justice can be comforting to those who see rampant evil, exploitation, and corruption dominating aspects of our present world. Enoch's prophecy confirms that nobody, not even angels, can escape accountability for wrongdoing, and that divine justice remains impartial and absolute. Intertwined with these looming eschatological visions is another theme woven through the Book of Enoch: the promise that hidden knowledge will be revealed to the righteous. In the text, Enoch, ascending to the heavenly realms, converses with angels who divulge to him secrets about astronomy, cosmology, morality, and divine decrees. These are not trivial facts, but rather profound disclosures that broaden one's understanding of reality and pave the way for a deeper spiritual life. According to Enoch, those who maintain integrity and devotion to God will receive progressively greater revelations, an idea that has resonated through centuries of mystical thought within multiple religious traditions. This promise of hidden knowledge can be seen as a divine enticement toward moral striving. Living righteously is not only about avoiding punishment, but also about gaining special insights into the nature of the universe and the Creator. Many who embrace the Book of Enoch's outlook believe that throughout history, various saints, prophets, and devout individuals, think of Abraham, Moses, King David, the Virgin Mary, and the Apostles, did in fact receive such revelations and pass them along, sometimes in cryptic forms, to future generations. While the mainstream Bible also emphasizes God revealing truth through prophets, Enoch's portrayal of that idea can be more dramatic and visually striking, reflecting the text's apocalyptic character. Yet another powerful aspect of Enoch's visions concerns the final resurrection, which parallels or echoes the Christian expectation of a rapture or the resurrection of the saints at the end of days. According to the book of Enoch, at some future point, the faithful who have died will be raised to a glorious new life in a divinely reconstituted world. Death, in this narrative, is not an ultimate conclusion but more of a transformative threshold to a higher existence. On that day, souls deemed righteous will be restored to a state of unimaginable peace, united with Christ or the Messiah in an everlasting kingdom. The promise of resurrection is a source of immense hope in Christian theology and has its roots in Jewish thought as well. In Enoch's account, the resonance with broader Judeo-Christian apocalyptic ideas is evident. Evil is overthrown once and for all, suffering is banished, and the entire cosmos aligns with the original divine plan unblemished by sin. For those who read Enoch devotionally, it reinforces the theme that earthly life is a sacred trust, a place of moral decision-making that has enormous eternal consequences. Hence, everything we do here and now, the attitudes we harbor, the choices we make, and the allegiances we keep, helps determine our destiny when the final resurrection unfolds. When we look closer at some of these prophecies, such as the Great Flood, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the coming of the Messiah, it's easy for many believers to see them as already fulfilled in some measure. The flood story obviously resonates with Noah's account, which is widely known from Genesis. History textbooks reveal that civilizations do indeed exhibit the cyclical pattern of ascending heights of power and subsequent collapse. Meanwhile, Christians firmly interpret the Enochic prophecy of a Messiah as being fulfilled through the person of Jesus Christ. That alignment is not just a neat historical correlation. It deepens faith for many, demonstrating that from the earliest times, there was a cosmic plan in motion, orchestrated by God. Enoch, in this light, appears as a visionary who foreshadowed the central events and themes that the rest of the Bible details in other forms. Not everyone agrees with that reading, of course. Some see the Book of Enoch as purely mythical or symbolic, while others place it in a category of ancient literature that can be historically valuable but not necessarily divinely inspired. Yet for those who do find theological significance in it, these fulfilled prophecies act like an anchor, stabilizing the trust that the text's futuristic and eschatological predictions, those that have not yet come to pass, will also, in their own time, be realized. One such future prophecy that grips the imagination is Enoch's presentation of the final judgment. In the text, Enoch describes a heavenly courtroom scenario in which all beings, celestial and terrestrial, are summoned. This universal day of reckoning spares no one, from the rebellious angels who defied God's commands to humans who either strayed from moral paths or persisted in wicked behaviors. Enoch's depiction is often vivid, reminiscent of other apocalyptic literature where punishment is proportionate to one's deeds. The Watchers who introduced forbidden knowledge and fostered tremendous violence via their offspring, the Nephilim, stand at the center of condemnation, illustrating how those entrusted with authority are held to an even stricter standard when they misuse it. Humans, too, face scrutiny for their individual choices, effectively emphasizing free will and personal responsibility. The drama and intensity of this scene can be daunting, but, like many biblical prophecies, it serves as both caution and comfort. It warns that no sin will go unaddressed by a just God, but it also encourages moral rectitude and offers hope that the seemingly unchecked evils of the present age will ultimately be undone. Such a final judgment is coupled with the promise of a new creation, a restored world under the reign of divine righteousness. In many Christian circles, this is seen as the reign of Christ, an era marked by the banishment of evil. Enoch's prophecies, steeped in images of cosmic upheaval, eventually pivot toward a portrait of peace, a kingdom where people live in harmony with God and with each other. Here, we find one of the Book of Enoch's vital messages. After the purifying fire of judgment comes renewal, an affirmation of God's desire not just to punish but to save, not to destroy but to mend. Therefore, the Book of Enoch's vision of the future consistently interweaves accountability with restoration. For contemporary believers, this perspective encourages perseverance. Facing moral chaos and injustice, one can still have confidence that the story does not end there. A holy order awaits, in which suffering is eclipsed by eternal communion with God. To understand how these messages persist, Consider that in the centuries since the Book of Enoch was composed, theologians, mystics, and laypeople have continuously revisited it. Despite not being universally canonized, it has never truly disappeared from Christian consciousness. The Ethiopian Orthodox tradition in particular has preserved the Book of Enoch as part of its sacred scripture, reading it liturgically and weaving its imagery into aspects of spiritual formation. In Western Christianity, it was rediscovered with renewed interest in modern times, as manuscripts and translations became more accessible, encouraging fresh rounds of debate and scholarly analysis. The broad consensus among those who have given serious attention to the text is that while certain aspects can feel obscure or allegorical, especially in its wild cosmic tours and descriptions of angelic hierarchies, there is also an undeniable moral and spiritual urgency in its pages. Enoch's abiding concern is with the presence of evil, the accountability demanded by a just God, and the promise that the righteous, if they remain steadfast, will receive divine favor beyond measure. In that sense, it echoes mainstream biblical texts, bridging the primal stories of Genesis with the apocalyptic climax of Revelation. Another striking facet of the Book of Enoch is how it offers a more elaborate angelology than what is found in the canonical Bible. Readers encounter the Watchers, who were originally entrusted by God to watch over the unfolding human drama, but who succumbed to temptation and thus brought moral chaos upon the earth. We see Enoch's dialogues with archangels like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, who illustrate aspects of divine governance and cosmic order. These angels convey revelations about not only future events but the structure of the cosmos, the cycles of the heavens, and the hidden realities behind natural phenomena. For those with an interest in angelic lore, Enoch's expansions can be awe-inspiring. They cast a wide lens on biblical references, explaining that angels have roles in regulating cosmic processes such as the winds, weather patterns, astral movements, and even the fate of souls. While some modern readers might see these as poetic or mythic expansions of simpler biblical references, others interpret them as glimpses into genuine mysteries of God's creation that have been lost or minimized in mainstream theological discourse. Whichever perspective one takes, the angelic narratives in Enoch enrich the conversation about how humanity understands and interacts with the celestial realm. Across these stories and visions, the moral dimension remains primary. The Book of Enoch consistently calls for righteous living, humility before God, and a willingness to heed the warnings of divine messengers. Prophecy in the biblical tradition has never been about mere fortune-telling. It is rooted in a covenantal mindset. The messages from prophets carry moral implications, guidelines for behavior, and calls to repentance. Enoch's prophecies are no different. They don't just foretell cataclysmic floods or triumphant messianic arrivals. They challenge listeners to examine their ways and either turn back to God or face consequences. In this sense, Enoch stands in the lineage of biblical prophets like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, and others, who insisted that covenant faithfulness and moral integrity are foundational to a healthy relationship between God and humanity. Indeed, the concept of prophecy here is not limited to predicting the future. It includes revealing divine knowledge and moral truths that empower believers to walk in righteousness. For Enoch, the final outcome, whether one experiences punishment or reward, hinges on how one aligns with God's revealed will. The stark contrast drawn between the destruction of the unrighteous and the salvation of the righteous is the gravity of moral choices. Part of the intrigue in reading these prophecies now is seeing how they've shaped theological discourses around the problem of evil, the concept of free will, and humanity's longing for justice. The presence of fallen angels influencing human behavior raises the question of how responsible humans are for their own sins if supernatural entities meddle with their moral development. Enoch's narrative suggests that, although the fallen angels introduced new depths of corruption and knowledge of forbidden arts, humans still choose their path. That theme resonates with broader biblical instruction on temptation and accountability, as found in the book of James or the letters of Paul, which talk about resisting evil influences and persevering in doing good. Enoch's text places a sharper cosmic lens on it, but the spiritual principle remains consistent. Each soul is tasked with upholding righteousness, even amidst an environment rife with deception. This dynamic interplay of spiritual forces and human agency has fascinated interpreters for generations, offering a rich field of contemplation. How do we guard ourselves from corrupt influences while still acknowledging that salvation and restoration ultimately come from God? When we bring these prophecies into modern relevance, we see that believers often approach them with a layered understanding. Some read the book of Enoch devotionally, seeking inspiration and spiritual edification, while others approach it academically, examining its language, historical context, and parallels with other Near Eastern texts. Regardless of method, readers are typically drawn to its compelling vision of a cosmos in crisis, echoing a feeling many people still experience today as they look at moral decay, institutional corruption, natural disasters, and various forms of social and spiritual upheaval. Enoch's perspective, that ultimately God will intervene to rectify all that is broken, resonates strongly with those yearning for hope. There is comfort in the notion that no amount of fallen angel chaos, no scale of moral degeneracy, can derail the overarching divine plan for justice and redemption. Even the Watchers, once mighty angels, are not invulnerable to judgment. With that in mind, Enoch's prophecies project a certain cosmic optimism. Despite real tribulations, a day of vindication lies ahead for those who remain faithful. On the question of hidden knowledge, some interpret Enoch's references to revelations of deep secrets as an allegory for spiritual insight that grows with faithfulness. Others see it literally, positing that ancient figures like Enoch, Abraham, or Moses received advanced knowledge, scientific, cosmological, or otherwise, that was not widely disclosed until much later. Indeed, in various apocryphal and mystical traditions, there is a motif of righteous individuals receiving insights into the motions of the stars, the secrets of nature, and the deeper workings of divine providence. In the Book of Enoch, we see a celestial tour that includes insights into the movement of celestial bodies, the boundaries of the earth, and the nature of the spiritual realms. While modern science does not typically rely on these sorts of ancient visionary texts for data, there's a metaphorical truth that many believers find poignant. Living in close communion with God can reveal truths about the universe and our place within it that are inaccessible through purely materialistic methods. For some, that underscores the synergy between faith and reason, suggesting that science can describe how things function. In the centuries to come, it's likely that the Book of Enoch will continue to spark debate and devotion in equal measure. New manuscript discoveries and advances in linguistic and historical research will shed further light on its origins, development, and place in the tapestry of ancient Jewish and Christian thought. Scholars will keep analyzing the text's interplay with other Second Temple period writings, while believers will keep drawing on its spiritual messages for edification. Meanwhile, those prophecies that appear unfulfilled, like the final judgment, the ultimate destruction of evil, and the establishment of an everlasting kingdom, will remain potent points of eschatological hope. As Christians contemplate the book of Revelation or the apocalyptic passages in the Gospels, they might also find parallels in Enoch's vivid portrayals, reinforcing the notion that from the earliest biblical memories, believers held fast to a future vision in which God mends the broken world. It is that hope, more than the sensational details of cosmic battles or the condemnation of giant hybrids, that truly animates the heart of the prophecy. Prophecy without hope would be mere doomsaying. Prophecy that promises restoration becomes a rallying cry for faith. These reflections take on a personal dimension too. The Book of Enoch challenges individuals to ask where they stand in this cosmic drama of rebellion and redemption. Are they living in the pattern of those who defy God's commands? Or do they strive to embody the virtues that align them with the heavenly order? Have they allowed themselves to be swayed by the enticements of angelic rebels, whether literal or metaphorical, who promise quick power, or do they persevere in humble faith? The text posits an underlying spiritual truth, that every choice matters because everything is under divine scrutiny, and outcomes eventually lead to a sorting of souls. From a Christian point of view, this dovetails seamlessly with the idea of living in Christ, who offers both guidance and grace. He is seen as the ultimate revelation of hidden knowledge, God made flesh, bridging heaven and earth in a way Enoch's journeys could only foreshadow. Thus, for some readers, Enoch is almost a prototype of the Christian saint, wholly devoted, intimately acquainted with divine mysteries, and a precursor to Jesus' definitive revelation. Throughout all these reflections, one central thread is clear. Prophecy in Enoch's text is not meant to stand alone as a curio from an esoteric past. It's integrated into a broader biblical narrative about the human condition. We are moral beings placed in a universe where spiritual powers, both good and evil, vie for influence, where personal decisions have weight beyond their immediate context, and where God's ultimate plan is to restore harmony, justice, and love in a definitive, once and for all manner. Enoch's vantage point, obtained through angelic guidance, is cosmic, bridging the earliest eras of human civilization and the final moments of history as we know it. Because his timeline spans from the pre-flood world to the far eschatological future, Enoch's prophecies give readers the sense that God's plan encompasses every chapter of creation's story. Nothing is random or outside divine oversight. That scope itself can be comforting, an affirmation that the seemingly unbridled chaos of life is actually overseen by a sovereign hand that will not let evil or suffering have the last word. For modern believers, this also reaffirms the continuity of God's purposes across time. The God who judged a corrupt pre-flood world, who promised a Messiah, who guided nations, and who reveals hidden knowledge, is the same God who still promises a final resurrection and the unification of heaven and earth. If the earlier segments of prophecy have proven reliable, or have offered strong spiritual metaphors that ring true in people's experiences, then there's a logical consistency in trusting that the final segments of prophecy, those about the ultimate judgment and the life beyond it, will also come to fruition. This fosters a mindset of patient endurance. Even if the road is long and the state of the world is disheartening, the believer is summoned to remain firm in faith, secure in the knowledge that a deeper moral order underpins reality. Enoch becomes a testimony that, in the fullness of divine revelation, everything is accounted for: the triumphs, the tragedies, the ephemeral power of empires, and the eventually irreversible intervention of God to set things right. Moreover, for those who are captivated by the idea of hidden knowledge gradually being revealed, Enoch's writings underscore a mystical path in which each generation potentially gains more insight into the divine plan. This might take the form of heightened scriptural understanding, deeper prayer experiences, or communal discernment about ethical responsibilities in changing times. In the Book of Enoch, the concept of knowledge is not strictly about intellectual prowess, but about insight that transforms the heart and prompts holiness. True knowledge of God leads to worship, obedience, and a renewed commitment to justice. It is the unification of truth and love, where the more one perceives the cosmic architecture, the more one yearns to live in harmony with it. This mystical bent resonates with Christians throughout history who have pursued contemplative life, monasticism, or spiritual retreats, believing that deeper intimacy with God is the key to unlocking the secrets of creation. For them, Enoch is a shining exemplar, an ordinary man so devoted to righteousness that God granted him extraordinary revelations. All of this encourages us to read the Book of Enoch not as a standalone curiosity, but as part of a broader tapestry. Within that tapestry, we see the interplay of biblical figures, like Abraham, Moses, and David, who likewise received revelations pertinent to their times, culminating in the New Testament revelation of Jesus Christ. Each of these figures contributed pieces to the larger puzzle of God's design for salvation, and Enoch's puzzle piece includes the narrative of rebellious angels, catastrophic judgment, cosmic tours, and the promise of final restoration. However we parse its literal or symbolic references, the spiritual themes are integral to the larger biblical worldview. Sin has cosmic dimensions, righteousness is recognized and rewarded, and all creation will ultimately align with the will of the Creator. That universal scope can be both humbling and empowering, prompting a sense of awe for the complexities of God's domain, and also a sense of personal responsibility for living according to divine laws. It is also instructive that in mainstream Jewish and Christian settings, the Book of Enoch remains largely outside the recognized canon. This highlights the historical complexities of how communities decided which texts were divinely inspired and which were supplementary. For centuries, many in the West did not even have full access to Enoch's writings, as they were better preserved in Ethiopia. When missionaries and scholars rediscovered and translated them, interest was reignited, leading to various theories on Enoch's influence on the New Testament, particularly on passages that discuss the Watchers or the nature of final judgment. Some scholars argue that the authors of certain New Testament epistles were familiar with Enoch's teachings. The letter of Jude, for instance, seems to quote from Enoch explicitly. This has led some believers to wonder, if the New Testament references Enoch, why isn't Enoch included in the Bible worldwide? The answers lie in the fluid historical process of canon formation, cultural barriers, and doctrinal scrutiny that weighed certain texts as central and others as peripheral. Yet for those who do read it, Enoch offers a rich well of mythic and theological reflection that stands side by side with the recognized books of the Bible, potentially clarifying or elaborating on themes that remain implicit in the canonical texts. As we consider all these facets, the Great Flood, the cyclical rise and fall of kingdoms, the arrival of a Messiah, the final judgment, the disclosure of hidden knowledge, and the final resurrection, we see a coherent worldview that overlaps significantly with mainstream Judeo-Christian eschatology, but also extends it in unique directions. Enoch's vantage is an invitation for believers to think in cosmic terms, to see the spiritual dimension behind political events, and to trust in a divine timeline that is both longer and more all-encompassing than we often imagine. Those who accept Enoch's visions as genuine or inspired are encouraged to see in them a glimpse of the order behind seeming chaos, an affirmation that what humans perceive as scattered and random is in fact orchestrated for ultimate good. In that sense, Enoch's prophecies continue to carry weight for anyone who wonders how God is steering history, whether corrupt forces will forever hold power, and how individuals can align themselves with the side of redemption. Even the repeated references to the Watchers and the Nephilim, sensational as they are, serve as a moral allegory that the pursuit of power outside God's boundaries leads to monstrous consequences. That remains a timeless truth. Stepping beyond moral limits in the quest for knowledge, dominion, or pleasure unleashes forces we can't easily contain. Seen from a contemporary vantage, we might apply this principle to the abuse of technology, the manipulation of genetics, or the exploitation of the environment. Enoch's ancient story about supernatural beings who took illicit liberties with humanity can become a metaphor for how modern societies can unleash new evils if they disregard ethical boundaries. Thus, the Book of Enoch, written millennia ago, can speak to cutting-edge dilemmas of human advancement, urging caution, wisdom, and humility before the Creator. In this light, prophecy serves not just to announce a cosmic endgame, but also to direct present behavior toward virtue and stewardship. In the final analysis, whether one wholeheartedly believes in the Book of Enoch's divine origin, regards it as an intriguing piece of apocryphal literature, or adopts a more critical academic approach, it undeniably underscores themes central to the Judeo-Christian worldview. The existence of a higher moral law that governs everyone, even angels, the notion that divine mercy and divine judgment are inseparable, the conviction that human history moves toward a culminating renewal under God's providence, and the confidence that those who hold fast to righteousness are not forgotten. The prophecies in Enoch, in tandem with those of the canonical Bible, invite readers to live with a forward-facing perspective. By remembering the lessons of the flood, reflecting on the ephemeral nature of earthly empires, embracing the Messiah's role as Redeemer, anticipating a final judgment and resurrection, and seeking the knowledge God promises to the faithful, believers frame their entire existence in relation to an unfolding divine drama. Life becomes more than daily routines and ambitions. It becomes part of a grand cosmic tapestry that started in Eden, passed through Enoch's revelations, and continues into an as-yet unseen future in which God's purposes are fully actualized. Thus, the Book of Enoch stands as a remarkable testament to both the continuity and breadth of biblical-style prophecy. It tells us that prophecy is not just about random predictions, but about revealing God's heart for justice, compassion, and ultimate restoration. Enoch's visions offer a window into a spiritual reality where angels are called to watch over humanity, where humans are responsible for upholding righteousness, and where God intervenes decisively when corruption becomes intolerable. When Enoch prophesies the flood, he is not simply telling an interesting story. He is broadcasting a moral truth about divine holiness and the seriousness of sin. When he proclaims that a Messiah will come, he is pointing us toward an eventual resolution of humanity's estrangement from God. When he talks about the final judgment, he beckons us to consider that everything we do has eternal ramifications. And when he alludes to hidden knowledge being revealed, he is reminding us that life with God is a journey of continual spiritual discovery. In the context of Christian faith, these messages reinforce the hope that no matter how dire the world's situation appears, no matter how powerful evil seems, no matter how obscure truth becomes, God's plan is progressing. This is no small comfort to those who feel the weight of societal decay or personal suffering. Enoch's words resonate in a universe alive with celestial watchers, moral trials, and unwavering divine oversight. From the vantage point of daily life, that can be a rallying call to live more consciously, to remember that behind every human structure stands the question: does this align with God's justice, or does it defy it? Enoch's indictment of corrupt kingdoms or angelic rebels serves as a warning that might cannot enshrine wrongdoing forever. Ultimately, it unravels under the unstoppable force of divine judgment. By the same token, Enoch's portrayal of future glory for the righteous resonates as a promise that the small acts of kindness, integrity, and faith performed in the shadows of a broken world do not go unseen. They are, in fact, seeds of a kingdom that will outlast all earthly empires. All things considered, the Book of Enoch bridges ancient spiritual curiosities and enduring theological convictions. It invites us, centuries after it was penned, to reflect again on the cosmic significance of our moral choices, to align ourselves with the righteousness of God, and to look beyond the chaos of history toward an ultimate horizon of renewed creation. Whether we see it as an authoritative scripture or an evocative companion to the biblical narrative, its message still rings out. Prophecy is a divine gift meant to stir the heart, challenge complacency, and direct humankind toward a destiny shaped by justice, mercy, and redemption. If the prophecies about the flood and the Messiah have already come true, we can be assured that the story is still in motion, moving inevitably toward that final day when wrongs are righted, knowledge is unveiled, the faithful are raised, and an everlasting peace is established under divine sovereignty. Thank you for reading through this exploration of the Book of Enoch, its intriguing prophecies, and its enduring relevance for those who look to the future with both caution and hope. Reflecting on these ancient visions can inspire us to live more purposefully, to seek the hidden knowledge that draws us closer to the Creator, and to reaffirm our faith in a God who neither sleeps nor forgets His promises. The Book of Enoch offers us a grand cosmic drama, a drama that we may find ourselves participating in here and now, as we choose righteousness over corruption and fidelity over rebellion. It beckons us to keep our hearts attuned to the spiritual dimension permeating the world, and to never lose sight of the ultimate renewal God has in store. See you in the next video.